Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome not just a very accomplished professional, but a professional turned musician, Mr. Druv Kent, aka Druv Kent, from Singapore to our show. Dhruv, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Lovely to be here.
Dhruv is a musician and a former banker. He's a music entrepreneur, a singer, a songwriter with Druv Kent Productions Private Limited. He's the former managing director of Deutsche Bank. His song, Little Bit of God, became the first song by an Asia-based artist to be playlisted on BBC Radio. His song, Don't Burn Away, was on the US Top 20 and reached #1 on the world indie charts. And his Hindi song, Hindustan Meri Jaan, is ranked among the top 10 patriotic songs in India. His live band, simply called the Druv Kent Band, has won international awards and played a number of festivals and sold out shows in Singapore, Dubai, and India. Dhruv, what an amazing journey you've had. So before we talk about anything else, tell me about your own journey from a career in banking to becoming a singer and a songwriter.
Well, one hell of a transformation, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I grew up in India. I went to business school in the US on a scholarship. I was also a musician right through, right?
Mm.
So I had these two parts of my brain. And with the benefit of hindsight, one can look back and kind of see, these two kind of germinating kind of seeds. One was the practical side of me, and one was the creative side of me. And I was always in bands. I went to a boarding school in India called the Doon School. Yeah. We won various awards there, etc. As a band. I was just one of the people in the band. I was a singer and the drummer. So it was, anyway, so this evolved, but, never did I dream that I would write my own music, which is the odd thing about maybe the generation that, comes, if you're older than, let's say 20 years old or 25 years old, people cannot almost relate to that. But, it was till 20 years ago, people were not writing their own compositions, especially if they were, interested in English music or Western music sitting in India. It wasn't really a thing. And we weren't doing it at an international level. Yeah. So anyway, my journey in a nutshell was I became an investment banker. I was fortunate to be in Hong Kong and Singapore, and I rode the China wave. I became the China specialist financial institutions banker before they actually were Chinese specialist financial institutions bankers. And I kind of rode a wave of amazingly dramatic transactions, which I was in the foreground of, for some of the largest IPOs which have ever happened, capital raising which have ever happened even to date. Yeah. And but through that, I had this kind of pull of my music. And I think that's what finally, let's say, blossomed in 2013.
How amazing. Thank you for sharing this. And Dhruv, how has your own multicultural upbringing influenced your songwriting and music style?
I think it has. It's a bit hard to consider exactly what that has done. Well, it's done a lot to my music style, for sure. The upbringing, I think, is more, even though, I made traditional choices in the sense that I did finance, and it was not a doctor, it was not a lawyer, but it was a relatively traditional choice in that sense. But I think there was an open-mindedness to my parental kind of supervision and the kind of, and the osmosis of my life more broadly, which was there. And my studying a liberal arts program in the US, I attribute a lot to that I did courses in music, I did courses in, quote unquote, random things which were not going to make a living for me, 25 years ago. And those things really came back and informed big decisions in my life later on.
Amazing, amazing. And what would you say was the turning point that made you decide to leave a lucrative career in banking and fully pursue a career in music?
Yeah, so I think, so as I said, I was kind of fortunate to be part of part of several investment banks, as it turns out. So I was part of Barclays for a short time, part of Credit Suisse for a number of years in Hong Kong, and then Deutsche Bank in Hong Kong, and then Singapore. I kind of was one of the heads of their investment banking business for part of the region. So it was a tremendous kind of, let's say, career, if, in some ways, when I look back at it. And I was fortunate to be, part of a very lucrative system of people, doing intellectually interesting, challenging work, and also getting compensated somewhat disproportionately, I can say, now that I'm not in the business, and I have the benefit of, let's say, a little more balance to see. And then what happened is I challenged myself in 2013, and I said, I want to write a song. So there was always a kind of a push factor from investment banking, because some of the let's say the bravado and the extra, all that, all that, I think some of that didn't sit well with me ever. I was always a little more humble than that kind of persona. And so I always had this push factor that, this is not really me, what really is me. And I was still searching. And music was always there in the background and then became in the foreground. And I challenged myself in 2013 to write a song for the first time. And I had never written a song, and it was quite daunting. And I, as a good investment banker does, I made a to-do list and I said, write a song within, 10 days. And lo and behold, the second day from then, it actually was an argument with my wife, which kind of prompted me to come to the other room, which looks a lot like what you're seeing here, for those who can see it on YouTube. And it was to a room which was one keyboard in it at that time, and I just kind of played, and an entire song came pouring out, with verses, pre-choruses, choruses. And I was like, with refrains in the back of my head of what background vocals can sound like. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I went immediately, apologized to my wife, and we made up. And I said, listen to this song. That was the first thing I did. But the point is, it triggered an entire journey. And then I had the question, after a month of songwriting, I had a question to confront, which is, if not me to create these songs, which are coming through me as a vehicle, who else would do that? And how would they be true to the actual, let's say, the essence and the soul of where the song seems to be coming from? So I just kind of made a bold choice after lots of discussion. It took me 6 months, a lot of introspection, and my wife was very supportive. And I was also fortunate that I had a little bit of financial, let's say, support that I could make bold choices. The things we tell our children today, if you come from a background like mine. But, my generation, we didn't have those kind of the flexibility to do that.
Well said, well said. And as you were growing up, what would you say were some of your biggest musical influences or influencers?
Yeah, music influencers had a different meaning back in the day. They were actual musicians, not people who could help you on your Instagram. Right. So, I grew up in a house filled with music in Calcutta, now Kolkata. And I had, we had beautiful, I have images of this lovely large drawing room, the turntable being played, and you're listening to either Kishore Kumar, or you're listening to Elton John, or you're listening to the Beatles. Of course, all of that had kind of almost predated my arrival on Earth. The Beatles had already broken up, etc., all that stuff. But I was listening to jazz from Fela Kuti from Africa, or Begum Akhtar, and then which became, a few years later became Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, the great god of one of my inspirations. And then there was R.D. Burman playing, and there was Kishore Kumar. And so it was just like a mix, a motley crew of everything. But my heart was kind of stolen, I think, when I heard folk singer-songwriter stuff of the 70s, like James Taylor. I said, that is just something which is coming from a real pure soul, coming out into the world of expression. And that's what I really wanted to channel.
Wow. And, when I was reading about you through preparing for this conversation, it was fascinating that your music often revolves around human emotions and stories.
Mm.
Um,
Yes.
is there a personal experience that heavily influenced one of your songs?
Yes, I would actually say that almost each of my songs comes from a deeply personal. I mean, I think what's happened also, just if I could just take a little bit of a step back, is that now each song
Mm.
has become a bit like an album was in
Mm.
the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, an album was a body of work which encapsulated a whole bunch of things and invested a lot of time. Now, a lot of people, you know, some people are maybe not spending that much time on a song. It's kind of easy to write. There's the recording costs are relatively minimal, so you can just put it out there quite easily. So there's that camp. My camp is slightly different, where I'm taking a song and I'm curating it, reworking it, really kind of engineering it, and it's coming therefore from a deep personal space, a place for that I want to kind of express. So I'll give you a couple of examples till I get to maybe what might be the best example of what you're saying. But Little Bit of God is a song about faith, something that I've grown up around me, you know, but looking more from my perspective through the lens of philosophy rather than the prism of, let's say, actually even God or religion. And it's called a Little Bit of God, which is a bit ironic. Don't Burn Away is a metaphor of the earth burning away, but it's almost as much about me burning away and losing my innocence and youth and everything else. What it's all about is a love song I wrote to my wife, and it's got no words of love in it. Almost, it's just like, what does love look like after 10 years or 15 years of marriage? And that's it. It doesn't always have the words "I love you" in it, sadly, but that still means it's love. Anyway, the song I would kind of point to, I think, since you've asked this question, I would say is "I'm Still Riding," which is a song which is I wrote to my father, who had already passed many years before, sadly, when I was still a young man. And but when I became a musician, it was kind of one of the things that I kind of really wanted to get out there. And it's a letter I wrote to him in a way, telling him that I'm okay. We were all worried about your health, but I know you were probably worried about what you're leaving behind, right? So I'm okay.
Amazing.
So that's what the song is about.
What a powerful story. I must listen to the song.
Yeah,
my next question, Dhruv, is that you've topped charts and received numerous accolades all over the world. Which recognition or milestone has meant the most to you? And this may be an unfair question.
I'll give you a fair answer then, which is as much as all those charts and BBC radio and awards, etc., and hitting number one, etc., mean something. They don't mean as much to me as when I get to the end of a song, when I finish the recording. And to put it in context, it takes hundreds of hours of work on that one song to get me from the first time I'll hit a note on a song and start thinking about an idea and start phrasing something, and then I'll rework it, rephrase it, rework it, change every chord, every word will be re-examined, and every movement. Finally, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll wake up and say, "That's the word I'm looking for." So all that journey has happened. Then you go record it somewhere with people you love and admire. That process takes hours, and then the edit goes to and fro, up and down. My point is, it's a huge, and I'm just like sitting in that case, like an investment banker would. I'm really listening with my eyes closed and saying, that's not quite right. That drum needs to be a little different in tone or pitch. And then finally, when it comes back after all these versions and you have the final song, I just break down. Literally, I said, that is what I had in my mind when I started. I didn't even know what it was, but that's what I was looking for. And now I can hear it. Wow. Now I'm ready. Yeah.
Wow.
So
amazing. And what would you say are some of your thoughts on the importance of authenticity in today's music scene?
Whoa, that's going to get me canceled. No, I'm just kidding. I think authenticity is a huge piece of music, right? It needs to come from somewhere deep and personal, because that's when it touches you as deep and personal. And if you want to just dance or sway to the music, amazing, power to you, but will you remember that music deep in your kind of let's say, deepest parts of your being,
Mm.
when you're thinking about something, etc. Perhaps you will. But I'm just thinking that I do think that the most authentic music is the stuff that resonates from a human's emotion to another human's emotion.
Mm.
And that's what music does. It
Mm.
connects us
Correct.
from a human to a human, which is, I think, and I think somewhat some of that maybe is in shorter supply today.
Mm.
Shorter. It
Mm.
exists, but it's in shorter supply because you've got songwriting by committee, you've got songs which sound very similar, but that's happened, and
Right.
that's criticism of pop music in the past as well.
Mm.
But I think songwriting by committee is not a great winner. Songs need to come from people,
Correct.
genuine people, individuals, or small groups of people who are sharing that emotion and that moment,
Mm.
and then you can communicate it best
Well
and
said.
be felt. Yeah.
Well said. So, we've already spoken about all the accolades, but for any artist, there is also a lot of criticism.
Yeah.
And I'm an author, so I know that as an author, there's a lot of criticism.
Right.
How do you handle criticism and stay motivated?
It's a very good question. And there's criticism, and then there's challenges, and because there's downtimes, there are financial challenges, apart from emotional challenges. There's second guessing, which comes from outside the world, outside and the world within you. So there's all that, which one has to have the fortitude and mental strength, depth of passion as fuel to overcome.
Mm.
That is what I would say is one thing.
Mm.
But criticism specifically is actually specifically hard
Mm.
because it feels personal.
Mm.
Even if it's not intended as personal, it's sometimes dismissed. That's also personal,
Mm.
So the songs, when they come from such a deep place of internal kind of, let's say, expression, you find that the criticism is also taken somewhat personally, especially in the initial years. I
Mm.
think what tends to happen is over time, once you go through that initial period and you're strong enough, and you can ride through that tide,
Mm.
you start developing two things: a
Mm.
thicker skin, which is hard, especially as an artist, because
Yeah.
you're in the mood of absorbing
Mm.
emotion.
Mm.
And so you start recognizing which emotion is an emotion I want to absorb. It's coming from a place of genuine good intent,
Mm.
and some which are just callous, or malice,
Mm.
or jealousy, or envy, or disregard.
Yeah.
So you start having that filter, and that's the thick skin. And I think those are, so your filter and a thick skin both start developing, which
Yes.
allow you to do what you do best, which is find the space to go back to refueling. And the fuel, in my case, in your case, it could be going back to genuinely writing
Mm.
and saying, I'm in a good enough space. I've got that thick skin and filter to do it. For me, it's been that I can go back and compose with a free spirit. That's when I know that I'm on top.
Great response. Thank you. My next question is on technology. Technology is changing the way the music industry is functioning. Digital platforms, streaming services. How do you see the music industry evolving?
It's such a good question and such a hard one to put my finger on. To put it in context, I've been in this industry full time for 10 years.
Okay.
And it's revolutionized at least 4 times dramatically, about how people listen to music, where they listen to music, how much they're willing to pay for music, on what platforms and what devices. And, CDs are all physical product is obviously out. I mean, all that has happened within 10 years, and we forget that it's literally been my first album came out on CD as well as on digitally.
Right.
And now so my point is it's so rapid. So I think the good news is that that there is the artists, the barriers to entry for new art is very low. That's also the bad news, because there's 60,000 new songs on Spotify in a day, and in 1970, there was 40,000 new songs in the full year in the US. So you get a sense of the magnitude of volume, which is why none of us are listening to the same artists. Even though we all love music, and even if we love the same genre, we're not necessarily listening to the same artists. So there's all that. But I think a few things I would say are the core about how technology is evolving. And then you've got AI, right? Who's kind of at the moment still just posing as a amateur songwriter, but good producer potentially. Right. So it's the production noises and sounds and beats are good, but the actual lyrical content is very shallow, and the compositional ability is relatively modest. But that's all about to change. But I would think these are the things that I would take away, which are medium-term issues or medium-term takeaways for me. One is, I think that the human-to-human element is still key, because an AI is not listening as a human can. At least not yet, and maybe not for the next many years. So I don't think they can ever respond with the same level of emotional response than humans can. So I think there's that advantage. I think, secondly, I would say live performance art and live performing music are still here to stay.
Absolutely.
Right? They have an immediate resonance, which is visceral, and interactive. So I think that has kind of tested a few of the passed a few of the tests over the last few years at least. And I think the one big revolution that's going to come, I think, is in that, in fact, in live performing, being able to watch it from your living room and feel like you're there, as opposed to just watching it on a TV screen, but feel like you're part of the audience, you're part of that interactive experience. You can hear the crowd, but you don't have to step on the beer, which is on the ground, or the spilled glass of beer. So that experience, I think, is the next revolution, which will kind of allow us to be part of performances wherever we are. And but it'll take some technology to happen, but it's absolutely on the.
And that's such a great response, because it's probably where the metaverse will take us one of these days.
Yes, when that translates into something I understand.
Absolutely.
This might be it.
Okay, but I have time for two more questions for you.
Okay.
My next question is that, are there any other genres or styles that you're keen to explore in the future?
Absolutely. Always, I would say. So it depends on what the so I started, let's just say, for people who don't know my music and might take an opportunity to listen to my music, I started 10 years ago with this very organic folk rock Americana kind of style, right? That's what I kind of wanted to kind of create, and that's what I created an entire album around. Then I evolved to a slightly cleaner version of that same thing. So the guitars are not so twangy, you can't hear crash cymbals. For people who are musical, they'll understand that. But when you listen to it, even if you're not musical, you'll understand what I'm saying, right? And then I made some Hindi songs, which I still love, right? And I'm making more. Right? I'll come to that, right? And then there's when I went to Sweden, I wrote with a whole bunch of guys there who have these amazing pop tracks, which are really clean and glossy. Now what I'm doing is what is my next kind of ambition or next sound or next kind of view of my own kind of musicality that I want to explore. So two things. One is I want to do, I consider myself an Indian person as a person, but an international citizen. I've been based out of India for all my life, pretty much all my adult life. I've been studying all over the world. I've got friends from all over the world. I want to make music that is mine, which is not fitting into a box. It's an international fusion kind of music, which really talks about, and contemporary. So it's not going 20 years back where fusion music was, but it's world music from my lens of today. And that's what I'm making an album on in London. So that's one thing I'm working on. The second thing I'm doing is just writing more Hindi film songs, which hopefully get placed into some movies, which I'm working on, and Netflix shows.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, wonderful. Good luck. And my last question to you, Dhruv, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation.
Yeah.
What's a fun fact about Druv Kent most people might not know?
Oh gosh. Um, I don't know. I mean, I tend to, when I look back at some of my social media and I tend to come across as somewhat serious and
Mhm.
intense.
Hmm.
I'm actually just like, I mean, lots of people. I've got, another side of me, which is more, I would think more than 50% of me, which
Hmm.
is light and frivolous and funny, right?
Hmm.
So I'm very well regarded amongst my friends for a sense of humor, even though they won't tell you that.
Hmm.
I'm telling you that. No, I'm just kidding.
Wonderful.
Take it from me.
Yeah.
It's true. No, okay. No, but I'm
Absolutely.
just,
Well taken from you.
yeah.
And communicated to all the audience. And
Exactly.
on that note, Dhruv,
Yeah.
thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. What an
Yeah.
incredible life you have, and clearly you're having lots of fun doing what you're doing. And I think that is the most important when you look at it from the perspective of someone who's my age. Then you look back and say, is life good? And are you doing things that you are enjoying doing? And you
Yeah.
seem to be enjoying everything that you're doing. Thank you for talking to me about so many different aspects of music. I learned many new things from you. And thank you for talking to me about what you are wanting to do in future. Good luck and all the best.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thanks for having me on.
Thank
Pleasure.
you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.